many familiar faces. Many of you have come here over many years, especially to hear Dr. Nadkarni giving his talks on Savitri. This year, Mrs. Nadkarni is able to be with us. Last year we missed her. Today she's here, so that's a great joy for us. Last year, she and her daughters and many friends around the world listened to the talk live on Auroville radio. Today it's not being broadcast live, but the radio team are here to make a recording, and that will be available for listening to or downloading from their website in the coming days. And this year too, we'll be publishing the text of Sonia's talk as a booklet, and as you see, Manohar is filming. There will be a DVD also. So when we gather here like this at Savitri Bhavan, it's like a family gathering, a big family. We have come together here since 1995, I think, was Dr. Nadkarni's first visit. At that time, no buildings. We were meeting under the teak trees there, just a small group of people. Our friend Franz brought him for the first time. And in that year, he was just beginning his first series of study camps on Savitri at the beach office of the Sri Aurobindo Society in Pondicherry. And he began to each time hold a concluding session here. And those were very, very happy occasions. Prabhupada used to prepare refreshments for us. And up until August 2003, Nirodha very often used to come along. So he was our beloved elder brother, our patron. So that was something special. So that day when Dr. Nadkarni met us for the very first time, one Sunday morning in 1995, I will never forget. We were just a small group, I don't know, perhaps 10, 15, 20 people, not 20, 12 people. So frankly and openly he spoke to us and said that the reason why he gave these study camps was because for him the most enjoyable thing in the world was to read Savitri and to share Savitri. And of course that's been our experience here in Savitri Bhavan too. This whole place has been created for that purpose. Dr. Nadkarni's love of Savitri and his immense clarity and understanding has inspired so many people over the years. And I think all of us here, we owe him a deep debt of gratitude for all that sharing that he gave of his understanding of Savitri. And here at Savitri Bhavan, we feel a special gratitude to him for all the encouragement and support which he gave us in our work. Right up to his very last visit here, which was in April 2007. And just a month before that, in March 2007, the day before his 74th birthday, he was the first speaker to sit at this table here in this amphitheater. At those concluding sessions, every time that we held one of those sessions, often it was twice a year, Dr. Nadkarni always used to emphasize that Savitri Bhavan is a place where all members of the Aurobindonian family can come together as children of the Mother, whether from the society, from the ashram, from wherever, from Auroville, putting all that behind, the sort of the origins, that we all come together as children of the Mother in the atmosphere of Savitri. And it's my great hope that Savitri Bhavan will always remain a place where all those who love and revere Sri Aurobindo and the Mother will be able to come together in the atmosphere of what the Mother has called the supreme revelation of Sri Aurobindo's vision. Last year, the memorial lecture, the first of a series which we hope will continue for many years, was given by our brother Narad, whose association with Dr. Nadkarni centered around a shared love of Savitri, dated back to the early 60s when Dr. Nadkarni was a young researcher at the University of California. Later, Dr. Nadkarni and his family moved to Singapore, where he was teaching at the university. And that's where he came to know Sonia Dyne, who was also associated with that center for many years and still is, I suppose, although she no longer lives permanently in Singapore. We are very happy to welcome her here today as our speaker. To some of you, Sonia may be best known for her work with Auroville International, of which she served as the president and continues as a board member and as a representative of Auroville International UK. But today it's not mainly because of her long connection with Auroville that we welcome her, although that's an added bonus. We know her as a lover of poetry, as a poet, a Savitri lover, an accomplished writer and speaker on the vision and work of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and as a close associate of Dr. Nadkarni and his family. We feel fortunate that she's agreed to give this lecture in his memory today. Before requesting Sonia to speak, we'll just join in a short concentration, an invocation to Sri Aurobindo, to Mother, to the supreme light from which Savitri has come.
As I look around, my heart rejoices that so many have come to celebrate this evening the work and the life of a remarkable man, a larger seeing man with nobler heart. Sri Aurobindo's description fitted him perfectly. Dear friends, we are here tonight to honor the memory of Professor Mangesh Nadkarni, a true disciple of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and a most distinguished exponent of their work. I had the great privilege of knowing him, as Shraddhavan has told you, between the years 1984 and 1992, when he was teaching linguistics at the University of Singapore. At the same time, he was spending a great deal of his time with our small Sri Aurobindo group, our Sri Aurobindo Society of Singapore. And he was given so much of his time not only to speak to us at our regular meetings, but also to join with us in our leisure activities. Now, at that time, I did not appreciate how much of a sacrifice Mrs. Nadkarni was making. So great were our demands upon him that we were taking him away constantly from her and from his two beautiful daughters. So, Mrs. Nadkarni, may I make up for that omission today? In those days, we used to meet in a very old timber building at the junction of two major highways in Singapore. The noise of the traffic roaring past was incessant, and the timber walls of the building even seemed to vibrate with every passing vehicle. Still, even though it often seemed to me that strident, unmusical voice of a great city devoted to commerce was trying to drive out the beautiful words of Sri Aurobindo. Somehow we sat spellbound through the discourse of Dr. Nadkarni on the life divine or of Savitri. I remember the soft light shining on the photographs of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And I remember a fancy coming into my mind that even if the traffic was drowning out the sounds or trying to, somehow the air would remember, as water is said to remember, and that there would always be a little portion of the air of Singapore where that vibration was held. Now, you may think that that was mere fancy, but later I discovered something that Sri Aurobindo had written. Now, he had said, in reference to certain schools of Vedic thought, that which we have created in our consciousness by the word, we can fix there by the word, to become part of ourselves and effective not only in our inner life, but upon the outer physical world. Those words have great implications for us, if we will take them quite literally. The words of Savitri have a power to influence not only our inner life, but also the outer physical world. During the time that Dr. Nadkarni was with us, membership of our small society increased quite rapidly, and it included people from outside the Indian community, so that for the first time we could see ourselves as a truly international family. And this was due mainly to the popularity of Dr. Nadkarni himself, who was not only an outstanding teacher, but he lived the teaching that he so eloquently proclaimed. Speaking here in the Savitri Bhavan in 2002, he said, "Savitri is not great only as literature. It is a living book. It is not only the manifestation of the new spiritual age that is about to dawn on humanity, but it is also a powerhouse. This power becomes dynamic when we receive it into ourselves and manifest it in our lives through our sadhana. It is important to understand that Savitri is our immediate gateway to the intuitive mind plane, and that this mind plane is just beyond the grasp of our present consciousness. If we will persist patiently to read it, to remain in its atmosphere, it's like a key that will open a door, and a real progress would be made in the evolution of humanity. Among the passages that Dr. Nadkarni liked to read aloud, bringing them to life as only he could, many were prophetic in their revelation of humanity's potential, the destiny that Sri Aurobindo referred to when he wrote, "If mankind could but see, though in a glimpse of fleeting experience, what infinite enjoyments, what perfect forces, what luminous reaches of spontaneous knowledge, what wide calms of our being lie in wait for us in the tracts which our animal evolution has not yet conquered. They would leave all and never rest till they had gained these treasures. It is such a tragedy that we can't see, even though these treasures are within us, as in a sealed room to which we have no access. but we can believe in our future. Now, here I want to pause and to ask for your tolerance and your understanding, because although I know myself to be among friends, I have 3 curious difficulties. The first is the most obvious one. I am not Dr. Nadkarni. Those of you who have had the joy of listening to him reading the passages of Savitri that he loved will know that his delivery was unmatchable. And therefore the most that I can hope for is that my reading of the passages he loved will bring back some happy memories. Second difficulty. Some of you are seated on very hard seats. It's not easy to talk about a mantra of transformation. Only Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have the authority to do so. They alone can speak from experience. And so it will be necessary for me to quote very often passages from Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. I ask you to listen to these passages as though you were hearing them for the first time, and to accept what you hear in its simple, clear, and literal sense. I think you may be surprised by some of the things Sri Aurobindo has said, and then the hard seats won't seem so hard after all. And the third difficulty, that is very personal. I am a former teacher, and I am used to looking down upon my audience. Tonight, most of my audience are looking down on me. And even more alarming, the rest of them are staring me straight in the eye. And I hope you can appreciate that it feels rather like being interviewed for a job for which one is not entirely qualified. And that part, at least, is true. Now, to begin, I'd like to read a passage that is associated in my mind with Dr. Nadkarni. I can see him sitting at the desk in our premises in Singapore and reading this vision of the Mother as the Mother of the worlds, the divine Shakti turned towards manifestation. At the head she stands of birth and toil and fate. In their slow round the cycles turn to her call. Alone her hands can change time's dragon base. Hers is the mystery the night conceals. The spirit's alchemist energy is hers. She is the golden bridge, the wonderful fire. The luminous heart of the unknown is she, a power of silence in the depths of God. She is the force, the inevitable word, the magnet of our difficult ascent, the sun from which we kindle all our suns, the light that leans from the unrealized vasts, the joy that beckons from the impossible, the might of all that never yet came down. All nature dumbly calls to her alone, to heal with her feet the aching throb of life, and break the seals on the dim soul of man, and kindle her fire in the closed heart of things. All here shall be one day her sweetness home. All contraries prepare her harmony. Towards her our knowledge climbs, our passion gropes. In her miraculous rapture we shall dwell, her clasp shall turn to ecstasy our pain. Our self shall be one self with all through her. It sometimes seems to us that the promised joy does indeed beckon from the impossible, and yet no one has ever been more poignantly aware of the uncertainties of life, of the pain of life, than Sri Aurobindo himself. There are many places in Savitri in which he describes the human condition most vividly. Here is but one of them. A creature born to bend beneath the yoke, a plaything and a chattel of time's lords, or one more pawn who comes destined to be pushed, one slow move forward on a measureless board, in the chess play of the earth's soul with doom. Such is the human figure drawn by time. The very words seem to labor, and under the surface meaning there is a subtext of pure sound. That is the grating sound, or as the hapless pawn is pushed ruthlessly on the measureless board, and we hear it, and the subliminal parts of our being register that sound. The pawn is not lifted up gently and placed in position. It is shoved, an expendable piece, and in this way the human tragedy is made real to us by the purely intuitive speech of Sri Aurobindo. It is not just a speech that comes from the mental consciousness or from the intellectual consciousness. This kind of speech is so close to mantra. The sound and the sense form a complete whole which speaks to the depths of our being. And the whole of Savitri is composed of such language. How often we don't even notice it. In contrast to that picture of our human condition, there are the most astonishing passages in which the seer, seized by a power transcending space and time, rises beyond the normal ranges of human mind, and from there looks down at an apocalypse heralding the end of death and hell. True to the long tradition of prophecy, these passages begin with the word, I saw. Sri Aurobindo puts these words into the mouth of Aswapati, but the vision is his own. I saw the omnipotent's flaming pioneers over the heavenly verge which turns toward life, come crowding down the amber steps of birth, forerunners of a divine multitude. Out of the paths of the morning star they came into the little room of mortal life. I saw them cross the twilight of an age, the sun-eyed children of a marvelous dawn, the great creators with wide brows of calm, the massive barrier breakers of the world and wrestlers with destiny in her lists of will, the laborers in the quarries of the gods, the messengers of the incommunicable, the architects of immortality. Into the fallen human sphere they came, faces that wore the immortal's glory still, voices that communed still with the thoughts of God. bodies made beautiful by the Spirit's light, carrying the magic word, the mystic fire, carrying the Dionysian cup of joy, approaching eyes of a diviner man, lips chanting an unknown anthem of the soul, feet echoing in the corridors of time. A commanding vision. But how is it possible? How do we get there? How do we make that leap from the death-bound littleness of our present existence, so clearly understood by Sri Aurobindo, so accurately described by him in line after line of Savitri? It has taken a few million years of nature's evolution to bring us to the point where we are now, the end of the curve of reason, to use Sri Aurobindo's vivid phrase. What is the way forward? How do we bridge the gulf between our present state and the future foreseen by Sri Aurobindo? A radical transformation is called for, and it must begin now with us. The Mother showed the way when she called Savitri a mantra for the transformation of the world. How well she understood what that means, the secret of its power. She said, "With the divine love is the supreme power of transformation. It has this power because it is for the sake of transformation that it has given itself to the world and manifested everywhere. Not only has it infused itself into man, but also into all the atoms of the most obscure matter, in order to bring the world back to its original truth." We may have reached a dangerous stage of our human journey, where if we do not change, the earth will no longer sustain us. We misuse our human freedom to pollute the fragile envelope of air surrounding our planet. Air that is the universal sign of our oneness with all life. It was not around from the beginning. Air was created by life evolving in the oceans, and it is still the same air. Air that was breathed by Socrates and the Buddha. Air that flowed through the flute of Krishna. That is the air we breathe now. And yet the freedom we misuse is the very essence of our humanity. It marks us out from all other living creatures in our planet. Freedom is the most precious and the most terrible of all the divine gifts. For once given, it can never be taken away. Sri Aurobindo understood the fundamental importance of freedom and proclaimed it on the first page of the Life Divine. The earliest formula of wisdom promises to be the last. God, light, freedom, immortality. He was not a believer in evolution in the strict Darwinian sense. This he made clear in a document of 1914. In his view, man was a special creation, a divine soul in an animal body. That is why there are so many references in Savitri to the outstretched hand that is with us and guides us from life to life. All's miracle here, he wrote, and can by miracle change. Should we then expect a miracle? No, neither Sri Aurobindo nor the Mother envisaged a miraculous change, because it would deny to mankind the God-given gift of his freedom to choose. Without that freedom, no ascent to the supramental consciousness would even be possible. For freedom is the hallmark of the supermind, just as it is of our human nature. Thus, the climax of Sri Aurobindo's poem is not the moment when Savitri tears a mask from the face of death and discovers the sole reality of love. It is the free choice she makes on behalf of the human race. By her surrender to the divine will, she has earned that right, but the divinity incarnate in her does not impose a choice. Her human part alone must make it. Here is that dramatic moment in Book 11. Around her, some tremendous spirit lived, mysterious flame around a melting pearl, and in the phantom of abolished space, there was a voice unheard by human ears that cried, "Choose, Spirit, thy supreme choice, not given again. For now from my highest being looks at thee, the nameless, formless peace where all things rest. In a happy, vast, sublime cessation know, an immense extinction in eternity, a point that disappears in the infinite. Felicity of the extinguished flame, last sinking of a wave in a boundless sea, end of the trouble of thy wandering thoughts, close of the journeying of thy pilgrim soul. Accept, O music, weariness of thy notes, O stream, wide breaking of thy channel banks." The moments fell into eternity. But someone yearned within a bosom unknown, and silently the woman's heart replied, "Thy peace, O Lord, a boon within to keep amid the roar and ruin of wild time for the magnificent soul of man on earth. Thy calm, O Lord, that bears thy hands of joy." Savitri chooses life and continues to do so. Her love for Satyavan is stronger than the arguments of death. The choice has been made for us and the way prepared by Sri Aurobindo and the mother. A rainbow bridge was built in the unseen. The Epic of Savitri records the building of it and even becomes its counterpart in earthly time. The very language of Savitri marks it out, for it is the spontaneous utterance of an intuitive consciousness that we are only just able to grasp. It is the future poetry, and its appeal is to the whole human person on levels above and below the surface mind. The image of the rainbow bridge comes from A God's Labour, one of Sri Aurobindo's most loved poems, written in 1935, at a time when he was actively engaged in composing Savitri. It describes in words that are clear and explicit the nature and purpose of the work he had undertaken with the mother. "I had hoped to build a rainbow bridge, marrying the soil to the sky, and sow in this dancing planet midge the moods of infinity." The difficulties and dangers of the sadhana, the discoveries and ultimate success of the great mission, are all contained in the 31 verses of A God's Labour, almost as if this shorter poem was a summary of their elaboration in Savitri itself. Despite the unprecedented nature of the task, in the end, the work was done. The gulf twixt the depths and the heights is bridged, and the golden waters pour down the sapphire mountains rainbow-ridged, and glimmer from shore to shore. In choosing the image of the Rainbow Bridge, in speaking of his work as a rainbow bridge, Sri Aurobindo brings together two of the oldest and most potent symbols known to mankind. What is a bridge? A bridge connects the place where we are to the place where we want to go. By its very nature, it spans the twin dimensions of space and time, carrying us from the known to the unknown, from the place where we are to the place where we will be. And as a psychological symbol, it connects our hopes and dreams to their future realization. In its material reality, a bridge enables us to cross a dangerous place or an impossible chasm. Savitri is a living bridge created in the consciousness of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and imbued with a power to effect a real change in the way we see ourselves and experience our lives. As a sign of the connection between the earth and the realm of the spirit, the rainbow appears in myth and legend from the earliest times. It has an important place in the oldest surviving culture that we know, that of the Australian Aborigines, dating back more than 15,000 years. They too have their rainbow bridge in the shape of a huge coloured snake, the creator of their ancestors who roamed the primeval earth. From this rainbow snake, when it arose up from the waterholes to span the sky, their ancestors learned songs of power to sing into existence each feature of their landscape, each animal and plant. And in a later age, the rainbow became a symbol of hope, a sign in the heavens that a wrathful God would never again punish mankind by destroying the earth. But there is another, more profound reason for the choice of the rainbow symbol. A rainbow is visible light. Behind it is the spiritual light we do not see. Sri Aurobindo said this: contrary to our ordinary conceptions, light is not primarily a material creation. Light is primarily a spiritual manifestation of a divine reality, illuminative and creative. Material light is a subsequent representation or conversion of it into matter for the purposes of the material energy. Interesting to note that this description of the double nature of light was written long before we all became familiar with the mysterious double life of the photon, simultaneously both wave and particle. So the spiritual light, manifesting itself as poetry, is the true source of Savitri's power. In Indian tradition, the transforming power of the word is known as mantra, and it is more than just inspired writing. Sri Aurobindo has given us many descriptions of mantra, beside providing a sustained example of it in Savitri itself. From our point of view, one of the most helpful explanations is in the context of the secret of the Veda. If we want to understand how the power of mantra achieves its effect on our consciousness, then these words supply the answer. The mantra, although it expresses thought in mind, is not in its essential part a creation of the intellect. To be the sacred and effective word, it must have come as an inspiration from the supramental plane, termed in Veda Tam, the truth, and have been received into the superficial consciousness, either through the heart or by the luminous intelligence. The heart, in Vedic psychology, is not restricted to the seat of the emotions. It includes all that large tract of spontaneous mentality nearest to the subconscient in us, out of which rise sensations, emotions, instincts, impulses, and all those intuitions and inspirations that travel through these agencies before they arrive at form in the intelligence. And he goes on to say, it is there that the inspirations of the universal soul can most easily enter in and most swiftly take possession of the individual soul. It is therefore by the power of the heart that the mantra takes form. But it has to be received and held in the thought of the intelligence as well as in the perceptions of the heart. For not till the intelligence has accepted and even brooded upon it can that truth of thought which the truth of the word expresses be firmly possessed or normally effective. Fashioned by the heart, it is confirmed by the mind. But another approval is also needed. The individual mind has accepted. The effective powers of the cosmos must also accept. The words of the hymn, retained by the mind, form a basis from which the future thought energies have to proceed. I draw your attention to the last sentence. The words of the hymn, retained by the mind, form a basis from which the future thought energies have to proceed. In Savitri, Sri Aurobindo has given us a new hymn by which we may concentrate the thought energies of our own age. It is indeed a wedding hymn. To use an ancient Greek word, it is an epithalamion, celebrating the marriage of the soil to the sky. In former times, its verses would have been sung or chanted in celebration rather than read silently. But equally it was to be remembered and cherished and brooded upon. I must tell you something very personal here. Well, perhaps I mustn't, but I will. When I was quite a little girl, I first learned this word epithalamion, and I was extremely pleased with myself at knowing such a long and interesting kind of word. And I used to wonder whether I would ever get a chance to use it. And it's taken me 70 years. But here it is, in this beautiful setting of an amphitheatre, and I feel that the word itself must be rejoicing, for not only is it in the right place at last, but it is also celebrating a new marriage of an important marriage of the soil to the sky. No, that's just by the way. Reading Savitri may be our shortest, easiest and most direct way to develop the intuitive intelligence. And that's the first step towards a new consciousness. This work, Savitri, is a beacon of fire, illuminating everything that is brought within the circle of its light. In that light, all the achievements of the past, all our religions, all our philosophies, our sciences, old and new, all fields of human endeavour appear renewed and connected to each other by 1,000 subtle ties. When they are deficient, too narrowly based or distorted by ignorance and ill will, this light comes in to reveal the halo of hidden truth and the potential of hidden perfection our mental eyes do not see. It is the light of the supramental playing upon the human world, restoring the shattered original harmony of the higher spheres, a light so powerful it can change the way we experience the world. And as the Mother has said, it brings the world back to its original truth. All inspired literature has to some extent the ability to reach out and touch something deep within us that is a kind of homesickness, an awareness of something missing, a yearning for something that has no name. Savitri has this power to an exceptional degree, and to experience it requires no special skills of interpretation or language. A power is there, even in a single word or phrase, with the potential to suddenly awaken the psychic being within and bring it forward to play its part in the surface life, as many people know through their own experience. The power comes from the spiritual light, clothing itself in a language nearer to sight than thought, a language of symbols and images drawn from life to evoke a rich tapestry of meaning that thought, with its precise, narrow focus, cannot match. A single image or a single line can be a mantra designed to overfly the ways of thought to unborn things. A magic leverage suddenly is caught that moves the veiled ineffable's timeless will. A prayer, a master act, a king idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle is made the common rule. One mighty deed can change the course of things. A lonely thought becomes omnipotent. Sometimes one life is charged with Earth's destiny. It is a lonely thought that first calls down the transcendent force. The solitude of those who are chosen to lead humanity in critical periods of transition is a constant theme in Savitri, as Wapati has no companion in the light. And Savitri too faces her long ordeal alone. Most striking of all are the lines from the Book of Fate, describing a final dangerous passage in the Yoga of Savitri, a crucial moment when all is won or all is lost for man. As a star, unaccompanied, moves in heaven, unastonished by the immensities of space, traveling infinity by its own light, the great are strongest when they stand alone. A God-given might of being is their force, a ray from self's solitude of light they guide. The soul that can live alone with itself meets God. Its lonely universe is their rendezvous. A day may come when she must stand unhelped, on a dangerous brink of the world's doom and hers, carrying the world's future on her lonely breast, carrying the human hope in a heart left soul, to conquer or fail on a last desperate verge. Alone with death and close to extinction's edge, her single greatness in that last dire scene, she must cross alone a perilous bridge in time and reach an apex of world destiny where all is won or all is lost for man. In that tremendous silence, lone and lost, of a deciding hour in the world's fate, in her soul's climbing beyond mortal time, where she stands soul with death or soul with God, apart upon a silent, desperate brink, alone with herself and death and destiny, as on some verge between time and timelessness, when being must end or life rebuild its base, alone she must conquer, or alone must fall. No human aid can reach her in that hour. No armored God stands shining at her side. Cry not to heaven, for she alone can save. For this the silent force came missioned down. In her the conscious will took human shape. She only can save the world and save herself. What is Sri Aurobindo doing here? He's not just writing elegant verses within a conventional frame. He is sharing with us a living experience directly from his own consciousness and from the consciousness of the Mother. He wants us to feel what Savitri endures on the edge of time and timelessness. The supramental consciousness is timeless, and Savitri's divine nature is at home there. But her human nature has been formed in time and feels the approach of annihilation. As in a meeting of two parallel universes, the two hemispheres must merge in her, or the works of time must cease to be. When being must end, or life rebuild its base. The future of human life on earth hangs upon the ability of her human nature to endure to the end the intolerant light. It is evident that Sri Aurobindo is reliving the Mother's experience, and in the agenda there is an account in the Mother's own words in which she tries to describe this strange state of transition. She tells Satprem, a strange state of transition in the most material consciousness, the consciousness of the body. A transition from this state of subjugation, of powerlessness, where one is always at the mercy of forces, vibrations, unexpected movements, all sorts of stray impulses that impose themselves, and on the other hand, the power establishing itself and manifesting itself. The transition between these two, the whole thing, gives the impression of walking along a very sharp ridge between two precipices. Now these lines that evoke the Mother's ordeal so powerfully have sometimes been criticized, because it seems to people that Sri Aurobindo is repeating too many words. He uses the word alone a lot, and he repeats words with the same meaning over and over again. But such misunderstanding only arises when Savitri is read by the intellectual mind alone, and the old Vedic insight that is by the power of the heart that the mantra takes form is overlooked. Heart speaks to heart in a different way. So here we find no mistake, but one of the finest examples of intuitive speech, making the use of a poetic technique called assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds to obtain a desired effect. Over and over again in this passage we hear only, lonely, soul, alone, words which have something more in common than just their meaning. They have the sound oh, oh, which echoes like a cry of pain from almost every line. Just as alone rings out, punctuating the description of this terrifying scene like the solemn tolling of a warning bell. Like the poets of Vedic times, Sri Aurobindo understood the force of mantric speech resides as much or more in the sound as in the meaning. Sound speaks to the subliminal and subconscious parts of the being, with suggestions heard by the heart before the mind awakes to them. Thus the response, veiled by our surface mentality, is from the whole person, and in time brings about the deeper listening of the soul. I'm remembering something now. Once I visited Nirad Bhavan in his little office behind the Samadhi, and he said to me with a twinkle in his eye, "I hear you are giving a series of talks called Savitri by heart. Do you really want everybody to learn Savitri by heart?" And I said, "No, I want everyone to understand Savitri by heart." And at the same time, for our students, learning Savitri by heart, a few lines at least would be a very good thing, in my opinion. If ever we needed a rainbow bridge, it is now, when the transition must be made from the reasoning to the intuitive mind. Alone of all the faculties available to us, the intuitive mind can take us nearer our evolutionary destiny. Reason is the highest faculty of mind that our species has attained. It has helped create the world we live in, but it has not been able to control the irrational and destructive impulses that arise in human nature. Sri Aurobindo is quite clear about this. In the human cycle we read, "The great necessity is the conversion of the normal into the spiritual mind, and the opening of that mind again into its own higher reaches and more integral movement. Before the decisive change can be made, the stumbling intellectual reason has to be converted into the precise and luminous intuitive, until that again can rise into higher ranges, to overmind or supermind." What Sri Aurobindo is suggesting is nothing less than the rebuilding of the base of our lives. It means, first of all, freeing ourselves from past conceptions and old habits, which impede or prevent our future progress. The unremembering hours repeat the old acts. Our dead past round our future's ankles clings, and drags back the new nature's glorious stride. Or from the buried corpse old ghosts arise, old thoughts, old longings, dead passions live again, recur in sleep, or move the waking man to words that force the barrier of the lips, to deeds that suddenly start and o'erleap his head of reason and his guardian will. This rebuilding begins with ourselves, with our willingness to clear away the old mental formations, the dead past clinging around our ankles. In Savitri, we have a mantra for transformation, and we should try to approach it as we would approach Sri Aurobindo himself. For indeed, the mantra is his own consciousness distilled into a form of words. These words are precious. They are to be read with a silent mind. Sri Aurobindo himself has taught us how to read them. He has said, "The mind, that restless lake of samskaras, preferences, prejudices, prejudgments, habitual opinions, intellectual and temperamental likes and dislikes, ought to be entirely silent in this matter. Its role is to be submissive and receptive, detached, without passion. Passivity without activity should be its state. For the Shruti, spiritual text, carries within its very words a certain prakash, an illumination. The mind ought to wait for that illumination." Do we wait? No, we don't. The surface mind rushes straight in and puts its own gloss on Sri Aurobindo's words. The habit of not understanding anything except when it can be explained mentally, that's a disaster. Those are the mother's words. So how do we begin? By getting rid of old formations, questioning outworn attitudes. And let us try to see matter itself in a new light. This important task of rebuilding the base seems to belong quite naturally to Auroville, the city of dawn. Already we see the pioneering work of the Savitri Bhavan has brought the transforming mantra within the reach of ever wider circles of people who are ready to receive it. And our schools could do more by ensuring that young people are in some measure exposed to Savitri. Just a few lines, remaining in the memory for a lifetime, will continue to work in the deepest part of their being. Even the physical labor involved in the rebuilding of a city, the clearing and planting of land, the construction of roads, waterways, creation of good channels of communication, all these enterprises are useful in themselves, and they might be even more valuable if they could be undertaken with the specific intention of opening up the sealed consciousness of matter to the light and releasing new energies in order to rebuild the base of life. If this could be done consciously and with dedication, it would be a great step towards a future-orientated society. To recognize and respect the consciousness of the material world is a new idea, a new area for research on lines already suggested by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Science in our own century is struggling to understand the nature of matter. All the discoveries lead to still more difficult questions. But Sri Aurobindo suggests a different line of inquiry, opened up by an expanding human consciousness. I read you his words again. They are extremely interesting, because he seems to suggest that our own progress is bound up with the progress of the material, physical material world. We begin to perceive the key to the enigma of matter, to follow the interplay of mind and life and consciousness upon it, to discover more and more its instrumental and resultant function, and detect ultimately the last secret of matter as form, not merely of energy, but of involved and arrested or instably fixed and restricted consciousness, and begin to see too the possibility of liberation and plasticity of response to higher powers, its possibilities for the conscious and no longer the more than half inconscient incarnation and self-expression of the spirit. Auroville may one day begin to explore such distant horizons as part of its essential research into the evolution of consciousness. Matter yearns towards transformation. It yearns to express the beauty that is the first manifestation of the divine in the material world. We can believe that perhaps the marble rejoices in the shaping touch of the sculptor's chisel. We can believe that paint and canvas embrace the artist's skill. We can believe that the clay longs for the potter's hands to release its full potential in beauty of form. And why not? Because Sri Aurobindo and the Mother have told us that matter is a density of the spirit. The Mother has told us that the divine love has poured itself into the most obscure atoms of the material world. And Sri Aurobindo has himself suggested in the passage that I have just read that we should be more conscious of matter itself and the possibility of helping matter towards the fulfillment of the earth destiny. It's all bound up with our own. When we contemplate a great work of art, we can almost feel this material joy which our bodies share, and the mind is all the time unaware of it. It may be that matter's joy is the secret of great art, which no one has ever been able to define. The secret that defines a masterpiece from the inferior stuff. The mother understood this when she spoke of the divine love infusing itself into matter. But why should such work fall within the remit of Auroville's research? Because one of the chief obstacles to rebuilding the base of life is the persistence of what Sri Aurobindo calls the leaden formulas of mind. In a homogeneous society, it is difficult for people to be different, to step out boldly in a new direction. Whereas in Auroville, where people from all parts of the world rub up against each other all the time, the mental grooves begin to wear thin. All things shall manifest the covered God, all shall reveal the Spirit's light and might, and move to its destiny of felicity. Even should a hostile force cling to its reign and claim its rights' perpetual sovereignty, and man refuse his high spiritual fate, yet shall the secret truth in things prevail. For in the march of all-fulfilling time, the hour must come of the Transcendent's will. All turns and winds towards his predestined ends, in nature's fixed inevitable course, decreed since the beginning of the worlds in the deep essence of created things. Even there shall come, as a high crown of all, the end of death, the death of ignorance. But first, high truth must set her feet on earth, and man aspire to the eternal's light, and all his members feel the Spirit's touch, and all his life obey an inner force. This too shall be, for a new life shall come, a body of the superconscious truth, a native field of supernature's mights. It shall make earth's nescient ground truth's colony, make even the ignorance a transparent robe, through which shall shine the brilliant limbs of truth, and truth shall be a sun on nature's head, and truth shall be the guide of nature's steps, and truth shall gaze out of her nether deeps. It's a wonderful thing to be here and to read Sri Aurobindo's prophetic lines within the embrace of these white walls, knowing that others will do the same day after day until all is done for which the earth was made. There are many ways to rebuild the base of life, and I hope Auroville will explore all of them. But of these, Savitri is the most immediately accessible and probably the most effective. Sri Aurobindo's great legacy has real power to transform the consciousness of all who approach it in a spirit of persistence and faith. Of that there is no doubt. And I hope all who can will come to take advantage of the great opportunity you have here at the Savitri Bhavan to experience this for yourself. The heart and the mind are one universal deity, and neither a mind without a heart, nor a heart without a mind, is the human ideal. The integral divine harmony within, but as its result, a changed earth and a nobler and happier humanity. It may even be that in the 21st century, we have something still to learn from those distant ancestors of ours who kept their belief that the world around them was created and sustained by the power of their song. We too have a song, Sri Aurobindo's great hymn celebrating the marriage of our soil to the sky. And we could even now be singing a new world into existence. On the eve of her birthday, the last word belongs to the mother. The moment you open to the divine love, she said, you also receive the power of transformation. Thank you for your patience, and I hope the seats were not too hard.
Thanks to you. Thank you, Sonia. On behalf of all of us, I have to say a big thank you to you. For me, it was a special delight to hear your pure Queen's English. Thank you so much. For sharing deep insights into the vision and teachings of Mother and Sri Aurobindo and the nature of Savitri. So yes, this is what this place has been created for, where we can each contribute our own perceptions, share them, bring them into consciousness to help this bridging process to happen. Thank you very, very much. Thanks to you.